Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success, and in our current climate, maximize safety while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. Our guest this week is farmer and farm educator Michael Kilpatrick of Growing Farmers, Small Farm University, and the Thriving Farmers podcast and online forum. Hey everyone, I'm one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I'm a longtime farmers market manager, Vendor 101 co-teacher, and education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active farmers market manager, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Farmers Market Pros community.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer and marketing director for Farmers Market Pros.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by American Farmland Trust, protecting farm and ranch land and helping foster a new generation of farmers. Your membership keeps farmers farming, and that means healthy food and a better climate for all of us. Find American Farmland Trust at farmland.org or click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. Today we are speaking with Michael Kilpatrick about educating farmers to increase production and ensure their financial success at farmers markets and beyond. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so nice to talk to you again. We were just saying everyone very much enjoyed your session at our conference this year, and I know everyone's just waiting to hear from you again, so we're excited to, and then everyone who maybe missed the conference this year, they get to know you and hear your story and what you're all about. So I want to just jump right in. Just tell us a little bit how you kind of got into the role that you're in now. Did you grow up in a farming family, or did you come from a different background, and why farming?
Yeah. So I actually grew up in suburbia. So we lived on 3/4 of an acre in literally a McMansion, not a McMansion, but they were sizable houses in outside of Springfield, Massachusetts. And so my dad actually was looking for a way to connect with his kids, and we started a garden. So we had the John Jevons book and the Victory Garden Kids book, and we went out there and did everything wrong the first couple of years. But that really awakened in me the aspect of loving just to grow things. You know, it's so amazing. I'm, in one aspect, AAA personality, so I love to see things happen quickly. And with vegetables, that you can watch them grow actually from day to day. Just watch things as they develop and grow, especially in the greenhouse. Stuff is so quick. So that kind of awakened that aspect of growing. Then we moved to upstate New York in 1999. My dad was hoping to avoid any aspects of Y2K, whether it was going to happen or not. He was like, let's just get the heck out of the suburbia. So we moved up to 9 acres. And that was really where we started our farming career. I'd always been told as a child, well, not necessarily told, but the media told you, the books you learned about the farmers was always the poor guy. You couldn't make money at it. It was always something you did on the side. I think that really came from my grandparents' era, because they grew up as farmers or on the farm, and they watched the people around them really struggle. And so we really never thought that we would do this as a livelihood until I saw, I think it was a 2003 or 2004 article of Joel Salatin in Smithsonian Magazine. And that really showcased the regenerative aspect of it, showcased that you can farm. You don't have to have thousands and thousands of acres, and that you can do it regeneratively. And so that really awakened that, okay, we can do this. Now, how do we figure out how to make it happen? And so around that time, we started growing things. We grew all the wrong things. I started with Indian corn and gourds, and I thought I was going to wholesale them to local apple orchards. And that's how I was going to make my money. Well, needless to say, yes, I made a couple $100 for a season worth of work. And we really didn't do that the next year. So
Kind of a narrow niche.
yeah. Yeah. So the next thing I started was I started hatching chickens and ducks in old refrigerators. So you take a side-by-side refrigerator, you obviously make it so it doesn't work. You add a little heat element, you add a fan, you add a humidity pan, and you have a thermostat, keeps it around 98 degrees. And every single day you turn the eggs, and after 21 days, you start hatching baby chicks. So we did that for a bit. But again, the problem with that is you're selling to a very finite market. There's only a certain amount of people that want chicks or ducklings. I mean, they don't buy the same thing every single week. They buy one time. So kind of, that was kind of introduction. We made all the mistakes until we started growing, lettuce, spinach, radishes, tomatoes, and found out that if you go to farmers markets and if you go to good farmers markets, people want those every single week. And they'll pay a premium to buy from two bright-eyed, bushy, tailed kids at the farmer's market. That was me and my brother, because we were 15 and 16 at the time. And so that first year, I think we made like maybe $8,000 over the season at the market. And that kind of really was the aspect of, okay, we can do this. It will happen. Let's get started. Let's actually make this a business.
What markets were you at when you first started?
So the first year, and I actually don't count this year, was the Granville Curb Market. That was in Chapman's General Store parking lot, and it was 4 vendors arranged around in a semicircle around the gas pumps. And I think some weeks we lost money because the stall fee was $5 and we made $3.
That sounds very like old timey.
Yeah, it's like the easy
gather
bake
around
Gather around the gas pump.
Yes.
Like, you lose the charm element, I think, when you get the gas pump in that sentence.
So the next year, we actually were mentored by a really good grower in Vermont, and he really recommended we go to the actual farmers markets that had, dues and fees and board meetings and stuff. And so we went there. It was a little bit more money to get in, but there, that first year, one week, we actually broke $1,000 in sales. So we were like there, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is actually a legit thing, and we could actually make it work. So that was kind of we were off to the races that year, because that was a real wake up call of what you can actually do at a farmer's market. So that was the Glens Falls Farmers Market. The next year we got into the Saratoga Springs, New York Farmers Market. And those 2 farmers markets did very well for us over the years.
So how many markets were you at that point, like when you first got started, how many markets a week were you doing?
Yeah. So we started off thinking we were going to do the Granville one and then the Glens Falls one. But after like 4 or 6 weeks, we dropped the Granville one and just did the Glens Falls. And then we picked up a Queensbury one, which was another smaller one, but we were still able to do, $400 to $600 to $700 a week at that other one. So yeah, those 2, the next year we got into Saratoga, we ended up dropping the Glens Falls because Saratoga had 3,000 to 5,000 people a day. It had 60 to 80 vendors. So it was a relatively large market in a town of 50,000 that was a college town and a racetrack town. So again, pretty big market. It was in really good and affluent neighborhoods. And so they were willing to pay whatever we wanted for, our microgreens, our cat grass, our edible flowers, that kind of stuff, the high margin products that actually can make the farm grow.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like, you've had so much experience, you've done it all wrong. You've started, you figured it out from the ground up, and you have, you produce so much content. You have so many amazing tools and tricks and, guides for farmers and how to succeed at the farmer's market. But if you could, boil all of that down and kind of distill it into 3 of the most important things that you think farmers need to do to find success at the farmer's market, what would those be?
Yeah, I think if I was going to break it down to 3 things, let's say I had like 6 minutes to tell someone before I kind of send them off. First is you've got to develop yourself or your team. So the person showing up at the farmer's market, the person behind the table, is at least 50% of how you're going to sell. You got to be smiling. You got to be welcoming. You got to use a good greeting. You don't say, hey, what do you want to buy today? That's the quickest way to get them running out of the stand. But I mean, saying like, how are you today? Something like that, because you want to elicit a positive response. And a positive response is just psychologically going to reinforce that you're a good person and that they want to buy from you. So don't be standing behind the stand with your phone out ever. Don't be reading a newspaper. Don't be loudly chatting with the booth person next to you and just glancing over it as a customer is walking by. Obviously, you don't want to be standing there staring at a customer. You want to be standing there, giving them a quick greeting, and then go back to rearranging your stand, even if it really doesn't need it, because that way they feel that you're available, but they're not interrupting you. So that's something I would say is and the person, if you, let's say you're not going to a market, but you're training somebody, that's super important too, is make sure that they have a positive aspect and they know the product and know recipes and know how to, get people interested in it. So that's the first thing, is that you have to show up right and have to be in the right positive spin, and just put on a fresh shirt. I mean, we would always take an extra t-shirt with us, even a stick of deodorant because you might be out in the field, working right up to the last minute. So something to make sure that you look fresh as well is important. A second thing is your product. So your product obviously has to shine. So if the thing about farmers markets is people shop there with their eyes. As they show up, they look at the product and they can be like, oh my gosh, this is a squash blossom. I have no idea what to do with it, but so bright and so colorful. And you just gave me a great recipe to stuff it with goat cheese and bacon and, a little bit of salt and pepper and then fry it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm going to buy that. And now you're making $100 a week on the squash blossoms, more money than you would make on your squash. So have product that shines. Make sure the lettuce is freshly harvested that morning, spun, that it will last 6 to 8, 10 days in people's fridges, and be able to talk about that you have a double money back guarantee. And we had that for our product. And I think maybe over a decade, we refunded, at most, and we did 1,000 farmers markets in that decade, $100 or $200 every refunds. Yeah.
I've never heard of anybody offering a guarantee.
Yeah, just because we're like, look, try it. If you don't like it, come back the next week and we'll give you your, and 99% of the time they were like, oh, this was amazing. So, kohlrabi, that's something that's easy to grow. It's a great spring and a great fall crop. It stores really well and no one knows what to do with it because it looks like an alien starship. But if you give people a recipe, if you give them, chop it into sticks, put it in dip, put it in the kids' lunches. It tastes like broccoli stems. It's even better than broccoli. I think I'd rather have it than broccoli. And again, if you grow it well, so if you grow it in high fertility with lots of water, it's going to grow fast. It's going to be sweet and it's not going to be woody and people are going to love it. And we got to the point we were selling 80 pounds a week of kohlrabi. Something that most
that's really impressive for kohlrabi.
It really is. I've never seen kohlrabi sell like that. So
yeah,
we always actually make fun of it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
yes.
cute. It does look like a little alien creature.
But yeah, we'd like the kids involved in it and you label it that. And again, it's one of those things is once people understand how it tastes, what they can do with it, they fly off the table. Right here in Ohio, we started with mushrooms because they're a very high margin. There's not a lot of people selling them in Ohio. But what we've really discovered is people are amazed by what they look like, but people don't know what to do with them. I mean, they're so tasty. And there's literally you can do anything with them, but they don't know what to do with them. So that's what's been for us is really all about educating people with recipes about these beautiful, the trumpets and the golden oysters and the pinks and all of that, which are just fabulous, but they don't know what to do with them. So farmers markets gives you the output. So you have to really worry about the product. The product has to be a top quality and displayed well. And again, there's all sorts of tips and tricks for display, baskets, vertical, using your hot corners. So if you have a corner on your stall, that's where you're going to be able to double your sales. So that would be the product. So the third thing I would really recommend is branding yourself at the market. So people have to be able to instantly recognize you, whether you're in the same spot every single week, or some markets actually move you around. You're like a floater if you're a brand new vendor. So we love to see a white tent. I always like white tents because they shine the best color down onto the product. I think red or green, they just make the product look weird. So you want a white tent, but then have your banner on the front. And if the market allows you, even put like a little I don't know what they're called, but there's a little side banner that can come up out of there. So if you're in an aisle, so people can see you down the aisle. And then have a recognizable logo, colors, make a brand board. You can get this done by literally pretty someone on Fiverr for probably $15-20. If you have logos, the elements that you like, our logo for our farmers market was $17. So again, super cheap. You can get it made really, really easily if you go to Upwork or something like that, if you know what you're doing, and then build a brand board around that. And then all your market signs have that logo and the branding on it. Get some t-shirts. And again, the t-shirts you can sell. And I highly recommend your crew at the farmer's market have t-shirts as well, so they can be instantly recognizable as the person behind the stand with authority, so people can go to ask them questions. You can brand your bags too with labels and all of that. And then kind of like a third aspect of that branding, which is kind of like a fourth, but I'm going to give it as a third, is capture emails or text numbers or messenger or something. Email is obviously the number one sales avenue for the world right now. I mean, yes, like the ads is out there, but with ads getting incredibly more expensive in the last 2 years, email is where it's at. So capture your emails, even if you only send once a month. I'd say the minimum is once a month. We love to do a weekly email newsletter, but capture those emails as part of your branding, or capture phone numbers for text marketing, which is also effective, but it's slightly more expensive. So those are the 3 things. Would be 1, you need to show up and you need to be a good farmer's market marketeer. The second thing, your product has to shine. And the third thing is your branding has to stand out, and you need to be pulling people back to your brand through email marketing.
So it sounds like Michael's right where we are with the 4 Ps.
Yeah.
So he's going to make one of them pulling, which is good. But we always say personality, product, packaging, and then professionalism, because we're market managers and we want you to show up on time.
Oh, yeah.
But pulling is another good P to add to our
Yeah.
list. Grab those emails so that you can keep pulling people back to you.
Yeah, all really great advice, and really echoes what we put forth in our Vendor 101. I love that really simple tip about getting a white tent. I know that some people like to get bright color tents, and maybe like we do have a vendor like Maya's Cookies has a bright pink tent, and that really matches her branding, and that's great too. But I think especially for produce and some of the stuff like that, just that white glow on everything looks a lot better than a yellow glow or a red glow.
Green. And the dark green, it's very shadowy. And
Yeah,
it's
we have
hard to see.
big organic farmer.
Yeah.
One of the bigger farmers at our market, actually, and he's got this whole row of green tents, but we can never get a great picture in his booth because that green casts such a weird.
It's so dark in there.
Yeah. So I would recommend, they make these little tiny there's that lip on the front of your tent, which is about a foot down. Get something that's Velcroed onto there. That's your logo. Get that your Velcro, that your color, but have the rest of the tent white.
Yeah.
Sure.
And this was another thing I was so impressed at the conference, Michael. You had so much really great visual advice for farmers, and I think that is one thing that maybe some vendors struggle with is it's kind of like decorating. It's kind of like this interior decorating of your farmers market booth that maybe some people are a little bit more hands-on. I don't know. That's just not everybody's strength, but it can really change the way that your shoppers respond to your product.
For sure.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I'm not really great at that part. So I just hired really good women who have really good aesthetics.
Hey, whatever works. Whatever gets the job done,
That's right.
Yeah. So Erica, who was our market manager for a number of years, she actually had multiple years of managing very large Calvin Klein stores on the West Coast.
There you go.
Yeah. So she knew retail at a science level.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
Yeah, people forget that it is like the psychological, it's the psychology of sales. It really is. You need to keep that in mind. I mean, as much as you're like, I'm a farmer and this is a, farmer's market, I'm just selling food. It's like, okay, but you're also, if you want to do the sales part of selling food, you have to think like a retailer would think, because those things work.
That's merchandising is important.
Yeah.
That's kind of like we always say, you want to take your strengths and then you want to get somebody else to do what you're not strong at. So if you're a fantastic farmer, but if you go to a party, you're off in a corner somewhere with a book because you hate to talk to people you don't know. You need to find that niece or nephew or bushy-tailed children and put them out there where they can actually do the selling.
Yes. Our 6-year-old is already she is so excited about the farm stand and all of this.
And who would not buy from that little cute 6-year-old? Come on.
Hey. I'm paying for her dental work this week, and I'm like, you are going to be out there 5 days a week.
I'll give you a pro tip. My daughter was 12 when she worked at the farmer's market. One of our popsicle vendors hired her to sell popsicles at our market, and she put a tip jar out there, and it said college fund. And I'll tell you what, that tip jar filled up, and she has a couple grand sitting in her savings account right now. She's in college right now, hasn't had to use it yet, but she made some serious money because who doesn't want to contribute to a college fund of an adorable, little girl at the market selling popsicles? So all you listeners out there with kids, get them out there. Yeah, put that bucket out there.
So that's a really interesting point. Tip jar, because we never did a tip jar. Occasionally we would get tips, but we never really pushed it for that. So I'm wondering if that's something I could start adding.
Yeah, I think a tip jar in and of itself is it's starting to grind on people. Everybody wants a tip for anything that's obviously just your job, but putting college fund on it makes it a whole different thing.
Yeah, we have a rancher who has a tip jar that says, and she's covered head to toe in tattoos, and it says tattoo fund.
Tattoo removal.
Tattoo removal fund. Yeah. And so it's like, if you make it funny, I think people are more, into it instead of just like a tip for working your job. But yeah, there's lots of jokes you can make at the farmer's market,
Yeah.
So
Cucumber or tomato, 2 tip jars, cucumber versus tomato, or
That'd be
exactly.
great.
Oh, that's
for sure.
fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very
You
clever
can gamify
idea.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Michael, I also learned during your presentation at Intense that you have a background as a farmer's market manager too.
I do.
So because you've kind of played it on both sides, you've been involved in markets both as a farmer and farmer's market, and you know that really idiosyncratic relationship between the market manager and vendors. In your opinion, what do you think are the most important things that farmers market managers can do for farmers to, support them, help them build their businesses,
Yeah.
etc.?
Yeah, I am not going to claim that I was a very good farmers market manager. We did successfully. So my history was I was the winter farmers market manager. We moved from a very cramped small space to a school gym that cost us like 4 times the amount of money. And we got massive pushback because the fees had to go up to cover it. But every single vendor was incredibly happy because their sales tripled. Because we had the much bigger space, more parking, all those sort of things. So we did that successfully. I mean, the biggest thing was the square footage. I mean, it came down to because the gym was still not massive, it was how do we fit all these people in there? But let's talk about that, because I think one of the things was that I did get a lot of flack for moving people over, and they thought I was responsible. Obviously I wasn't. I was on a board that was responsible for that. So I think, as a manager, very clearly defining everything, being very clear about the rules and regulations, what you expect of the vendors, what's going to make them successful. So that'd be one thing, is just be very clear on the rules and regulations of kind of what you expect from them. Obviously there needs to be a 3-strike rule too. So if they do something they're not supposed to, it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, march in the middle of the market, verbally berate them, which I'd seen other vendors do, other market managers do, is, treat it, again, that's the kind of stuff that happens after the market. Again, people's lives aren't probably at stake if someone's selling a carrot and they're only supposed to be selling meat. So that's kind of stuff. I think the other huge thing is just marketing support. So if you have something fresh at the market, get it on the market Facebook. There's no limit to how many posts you can put out there. And the more posts are probably actually a little bit better for the algorithm. Do a live at the farmer's market, walking around, asking the vendors what's going on. I mean, I see very successful marketers doing this a lot. But even talking to the vendors about what's coming up too. So if so that you can, have a newsletter weeks ahead on the product and stuff, that's going to be hugely helpful for them. Because these farmers are so busy. I mean, they're usually riding ragged, just trying to get product to the market. So doing that and having a good relationship with the farm owner, because sometimes they send an employee. And so being able to call the owner and said, hey, you know what? Just saw your people at the market this week. There's something that we need to adjust, or did you know that this was happening? I just wanted you to be aware of what's going on, because sometimes they have no clue. And so kind of just, not that you're trying to get the person in trouble, but your goal as a market manager is that your vendors succeed. I think if we can wrap everything back up as that aspect, is we want to see these people, on the beach for 2 weeks in Mexico during the wintertime. Just happy as can be, because they had a great season at the farmer's market. So whatever we can do to make that happen. There's one thing out there that's interesting, and I don't know where you guys land on this, but the aspect of, and not pricing control, but vendor control with, having 18 different meat vendors at a 30 vendor market. So that's something I think that, obviously, the more competition I think is good. I mean, you see, why do you have 4 different gas stations on 4 different corners of an intersection? But you also got to be careful that you do not have just meat vendors, or have that good mix. So I think that's another role as a market manager, is to just kind of be checking that. I mean, our market for a while, if there was one vendor selling something, they didn't want someone else selling it. So even if someone had nasty looking strawberries and they only sold them in quarts for $5, and after 2 days they melted, they didn't want another vendor coming in with strawberries. And to me, look, if you don't have excellent quality product around something and multiple vendors doing it, then you should probably allow someone else that might be able to, because again, you want the market as a whole to succeed, and you want to have you want when someone comes to that market, there to be infinite variables the entire season long, instead of really just shutting down that competition. So I don't know where that falls into the whole thing. And obviously that a lot of times it comes back to the board, but I think as a market manager, you need to advocate for good vendors for high quality product. And, I think sometimes be frank with some vendors and say, hey, this product, you're getting a lot of complaints about it at the market stand, at the market booth. You might want to think about this.
For sure. Yeah. We actually think that that's the element of genius in running a great farmer's market is your ability to curate and to find that balance, because American consumers in particular are used to having a lot of choices. So those markets that have exclusivity clauses where if one person's selling strawberries, nobody else can, is definitely limiting the number of shoppers that's going to show up there to buy from anybody at the market. And at the same time, if you've got 15 folks selling strawberries, probably nobody's making enough money. So it's a very scientific, careful program of finding exactly the right balance between providing shoppers with choices, which will increase your traffic, and not oversaturating any particular category. I think that's absolutely the most difficult in some ways, or most creative thing that a market manager can do is being really good at curating and continuing to raise their skills in that area.
Yeah, and that's important.
And I think another thing too is you got to have a thick skin as a market manager. You're not going to make everyone happy. Be it customers, be it vendors. The dog's peeing on people's product. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with one person being 6 inches over the edge of their space? It all comes down to trying to help everyone play nicely together and being able to handle an irate person or two.
Definitely learned that lesson.
Yeah.
Even harder than ever before this year. It was mostly,
for sure.
mostly shoppers. But the vendors, I think as market managers, just knowing that we're dealing with a bunch of small business owners, like type A personalities, small business owners, we all have to do this together, but they're all very independent. And so I think what's helped me as a manager is really explaining the reasoning. If someone says, well, why did you let this other strawberry grower in here? It's like, look, we have enough shoppers for both of you to be successful as strawberry growers. We want people to have a choice. And then really that choice will breed kind of a competitiveness in a good way where that one strawberry vendor who maybe doesn't have the best will take a look. Oh, more customers want their strawberries. Why is that? Oh, they're growing in a different way, or they're harvesting morning of versus night before, things like that. So it's like that that levels up the whole market when you do things like that.
So to that point, we were able to charge $5 a pint for our strawberries pretty consistently. We had to drop about the third week of production but we were able to get that, and the other vendors were charging $6 a quart because our quality just was through the roof. And we hit the market about 6 days in advance because we were doing annual bed system, and it's always a little bit earlier. And we were able to, just have really high quality product. And,
absolutely. We always say people aren't shopping at the farmer's market because the prices are necessarily cheaper or because it's easier to park. Yeah. They come because they want that really full flavored, high quality product, and they want to know who's producing their food.
Yeah.
Win-win for everybody.
So you're farming now at the farm on Central, right?
We're attempting to.
When did you move from New York to that farm on Central's in Ohio, right?
Yeah. So actually 2015, we shut down our farm in New York, and there's a bunch of, mainly my wife wanted to be in Ohio near her family when we had our first child. So we leased out that. We took, it was kind of circuitous kind of what we did. We started our online business 2017, and then we bought this farm where we are right now. And actually last summer, directly in the middle of the pandemic, which I never recommend trying to do that in the pandemic.
For all of you that are scheduling around upcoming pandemics. Check your calendar.
Yeah, next time. Beware.
So we got on the land last summer. And originally we were going to, and this is why I say attempting to, is originally we were going to put up a retail store because I'd done farmers markets. Again, as I said, I've done 1,000 farmers markets. So we're pretty darn good at it. But I just, we have a beautiful street here, 12,000 cars a day go by it. So it's pretty much, we could do our own farmers market right there. And I wanted to bring in other vendors once in a while. But as of 2 weeks ago, we pulled the plug after we'd spent literally like 10 grand on site development and all this and architects and all this kind of stuff, just because it was going to be financially basically when we got to the pricing and everything we wanted to do. And it wasn't that expensive. We wanted to do a 16 by 24 farm stand, a little, 32 or 36 by 20 greenhouse, and a small gravel parking lot. And we're looking at, because it all comes back to regulation, and it comes back to the cities and government interference. So we are changing steps, and we are actually buying an old transit bus, so a 30-foot transit bus, and we are building a mobile farmers market inside the bus.
Wow.
Oh, that's fun.
Interesting. So how do you picture that working? So
Yes.
we always kind of grumble a little bit when we hear somebody say mobile farmers market, because what that usually means is somebody's buying from farmers, and we have a big produce distribution company actually near us that drives around with a thing that says farmers market truck, and we just want to slap them every time we see them. But because
which is a lot.
It's not a farmers market unless there's a farmer present. So are you going to be are you going to be in that mobile farmers market, and where do you plan to set up, and where do you plan to sell?
Yeah, so actually, again, this is kind of developing here, so don't hold me to this, but like the current aspect right now of where we are with this is it will actually allow us to bypass 90% of the town's regulations about selling on our own property. So most of the time, the bus will be parked on our property because it allows us to bypass a development plan and permits for a fixed building, because this is now a mobile bus.
Kind of like the tiny homes movement, where you can't really build a tiny home unless you put wheels on it.
Exactly. So so we're a part of it's just sticking it to the man with, we're going to, just avoid all the regulation, folks. And it also allows, so that's kind of the big thing aspect of it. We also envision traveling around into the community. And again, not calling it a farmer's market bus. And again, I kind of said that, farmers, because we are planning on, we have multiple farms around us we hope to be sourcing from. Like, we don't want to grow sweet corn. We can't make margin on it the size of our farm, but we will be buying from a farmer and listing that farmer's name on the product and being very transparent about, this is our products. These are the other farmers' products. Like, we're of eggs. We want to have milk in there. Our goal would be eventually to even be able to move this bus actually into some of the lower income areas in the Dayton metro area, because, there's Dayton's got about 1 million people within probably an hour of the city center. And there's obviously some fabulous high-end zip codes and some not so great zip codes too. So our goal is to really be able to go through the whole aspect. That's the long-term goal. I mean, our goal right now, let's just get it up, get a place open on our property. And so we can start moving our products. And then after we get that straightened out, figured out, we'll start maybe 1 or 2 days a week starting to put it on the road. But our goal is to basically be able to have a set of areas that people can also pre-order. So obviously an online market that feeds this as well. So they can pre-order and just pick up at the bus, or actually, if they're brand new and they're not quite sure about what you are and who you are, be able to actually walk through the bus, we're going to put some reach and fridges in there and stuff so they can actually shop right in the bus as well.
Yeah, when those are done well, they're just amazing. There's an organization in Savannah that does what you're talking about, where they do load up that bus. They very clearly identify which farmers it comes from, and they are going into really low-income areas where it's tough for a farmer to justify spending a whole day there, because they just can't make the same sales they could in a high-income area selling. But for a group of farmers to stock that bus and then get it out to that neighborhood and provide fresh food there is a great thing for both sides.
Yeah. And one of the things we really were frustrated by is our markets were producer only, but there were always those 2 vendors, which you kept saying, nope, that's not theirs. That's not there. We know it's not theirs, but the market would never do the inspection. So we're very sensitive about that one too, especially when they call it their own.
Yeah, for sure. Always a hot spot.
That's always surprise in California, and especially in San Diego County. Our farms are so regularly inspected, and our markets are inspected so frequently that we don't have, it's not like, oh, I wonder if that's their produce. It's like they're getting inspected so frequently. But I know in other areas, it's up to the farmer's market manager to go do farm visits or to really stay on top of that and to know what each farmer has in the ground, so that if they show up and they put something on their table, that they can know whether or not they grew that. So
and at one point, our ag departments weren't as proactive, because the reason they're so tight now is because there was a news crew that followed a quote-unquote farmer back to an empty field. And it's sort of a farmer's market sting. And then at that point, our ag departments, San Diego had always been really proactive, but LA County not as much, and they really ramped up statewide after that, because it was very embarrassing for them. These were certified farmers that were clearly going to a produce warehouse.
Yes, and I'm glad they did that, and I don't like how it's stuck in a lot of shoppers' heads that happens frequently, but is what it is.
Yeah, the end result was not too bad.
Yeah.
So did you start, when you were kind of in between Kilpatrick Family Farm and the farm on Central, is that when your education side really ramped up, or how'd the education come into play?
Yeah. So when we started winding down things in New York, we leased out the farm to 2 of our managers. So these were guys that had been with us for 3 to 5 years. We kind of gave them the golden ticket. They had our slew of, equipment. They had our great employees. We left massive holes in the farmers markets. They got to walk right into. They had perfect soil because we leased them the fields we had. I mean, like river bottom, black chocolate cake, river bottom soil. So, I mean, they had everything going for them, but within 8 months, they bankrupted the farm. And that was a huge blow to me because obviously, we had poured the last decade of our lives into this farm, and obviously it wasn't under our name. So we protected our name through all of this, but it really stung. And so we started to look at why did they fail? And then after, when I left our farm, I felt I was in a bubble because our farm was very profitable. All the farmers we worked with were profitable. And so when I started to get out and started to see the country, and actually at that time, I'd started to get a lot more speaking requests. And because our farm was really successful, I started to see the farms that were failing and just wait a minute, guys, and then realized the statistics that after 5 years, only 5% of farms make it. And so we started to look at that. And so what we identified is 5 key areas that basically you have to be a profitable farmer and a successful farmer. And so that was when we started our consulting business at that point. And then we rapidly moved it into an online education business because consulting is trading time for money. And I only have so many hours. So this year I've actually turned down several big scale projects, which in a normal time I would have been oh, this is really cool. But I'm I just don't have the hours. I can't do it. But that's why we started the business, because we saw so many farms were failing. And it wasn't that they couldn't grow good vegetables. They were growing beautiful vegetables. And this kind of echoed from when I was actually farming, is that there was another farmer at our market who is literally the best grower I know. I mean, he came from Maine. He was a 100-acre farm up there. He was Hannaford's radish man. So Hannaford's an amazing grocery store chain on the East Coast. And he grew 100 acres of radishes a year. I mean, for them. So he was excellent farmer. He got so sick from the pesticides, he transitioned to organic and started doing CSA. And again, the crops he grew were top notch. I mean, his beets were always bigger. His tomatoes were always more uniform. His strawberries were always a week earlier, but he always came over to our stand and he would stand there and shake his head at the traffic just traveling through our stand. And he was I don't know how you do it. But what it came back to was our marketing, is that we, instead of, yes, guess we could grow good vegetables, decent vegetables, but our marketing was on point. Is that we had our labeling, our community connections. You really just focused on that aspect. So obviously that's one of the pillars that we think that every farmer needs to have, is the marketing aspect. But that's the aspect of what makes a successful farmer, aside from someone who's not, is just being able to understand what the customer actually wants and being able to fill that need. So that's kind of why we started the education, and then it's grown from there. I mean, we see a new need in the marketplace and we do it. So that's, our summits came from that. Our summits came from, they're Michael, I love learning from you, but there's all these other farmers I'd love to talk to as well and understand how they're doing things. So we're okay, let's do a summit, and everyone wins. The consumer lists and gets it for free. The presenter, when they list last year, so any of our presenters actually make really good affiliate off our summit. So they get to promote it, and anyone that signs up, they get a kickback off that. And we wrote 5 figures in checks to our farmers last year, which was amazing. And then we obviously as a company get to grow our email list, and we have other things we sell as well on top of that. But again, that's kind of how we started our business, and how we've grown our businesses through all that aspect of things. And, but yeah, it was just came from a need of seeing farmers struggle and saying, you guys don't have to, it doesn't have to be this hard. There is a way that basically there's a blueprint to start a successful farm. And as we start this brand new farm, we're making mistakes as we go. We are not hitting every single stride like we want to, but we know what stage we're in. Another thing too is just realizing where you are in your farming journey. There's 5 stages to a successful farmer. There's the dreamer, the start, the grow, the thriving, and then the mentor stage. And right now on our farm, we are definitely in the beginning stage. We haven't quite hit that grow stage yet. We're still, flailing around trying to figure out what the marketplace wants, all the different aspects of things. But knowing that and knowing that, okay, this season will pass, it will get easier, because I think if people are hopeless, then they quit. But if they have that, they know what the next step is, what they say, I need to do these 3 things next to my business, then they can just go do those 3 things instead of literally just like, I've got 9,000 things on my to-do list. I don't know which one to do first, and I'm just going to quit.
Yeah, for sure.
Overwhelming.
What?
So overwhelming.
Yeah,
Sometimes if you think about the whole thing together,
Yeah, I think your summits are amazing. I actually was first introduced to you through Charlotte Smith.
Yes,
who
yes.
did the
Charlotte's
summit.
amazing.
And she had spoken at our conference a few times, and she and I had gotten to know each other, and then she kind of introduced me to that. But she's been on the summit, I know. There's some people that point to you and some of the other well-known educators, Charlotte and JM and various people, Curtis, and say that the only way to make an impressive living in small farming is to do classes in consulting, and that you're actually making your money from that and not from farming. But it sounds like the way you describe it, maybe all of you at that stage are just in that mentor stage. So
yeah, and that's that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that one up, because a lot of people say that, and I start laughing at them because I was making more as a farmer than I did the first 4 years we started the education business.
Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, I was going to say, if you were devoting all your time to farming, would you be as successful?
Yes. And so like right now, I can name a half dozen farmers that are easily pulling in six figures in actual profit income from their farms. And again, the successful farmers don't want to talk about it. So there's a lot of people out there doing it. And so, I can go to an operation, I can look around, I can just see and I can know immediately, okay, they're making good money. But they just don't talk about it because they are, on one aspect, they're probably a little embarrassed that they see all these other farmers struggling and they're doing quite well. But the other aspect is there's a lot of jealousy out there and they just don't want to get the attention. They're willing to just do their farming, grow their food, and take that month-long vacation. Or I was actually on a plane to Belize 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, right before, it was 2019. No, 2020, spring of 2020. That was before the pandemic, right? That was like January, February.
Right before, yeah.
Yeah. So we took our first vacation in like 4 years, and we went to Belize for 2 weeks. My in-laws got a house down there, so all we had to pay was the airfare down there. And I got on a plane, and I recognized his face coming down the aisle, and I was like, "Hey!" It's like, I didn't know we were going to come. It's like, yeah, I try not to talk about it because this is my 3rd vacation of the year. And so this, again, one of those farmers bringing in 6 figures in actual profit on their farm. My mentors, Paul and Sandy Arnold, I've talked about on the podcast, they took an 8-month vacation because they could afford to, after, 30 years of very successful farming and being, very resourceful with their revenue, they're able to do it. So, but
they don't want to spoil that mystique of how hard it is to farm.
Yeah. And on one aspect, they don't want their customers to, and again, I think every single farmer should be making 6 figures. I think, unfortunately, if you look at our media, if you look at the TV industry, the farmer's always the poor one. So if any farmer starts to actually make money, people start to tease them. Well, you're driving Lexus now. That's kind of nice for a farmer. And I actually do know multiple farmers that drive Lexuses and Audis, and Mercedes. So, So we're at the point in our business now where we are actually, making a decent income with the business, the online business. But actually, we're actually transitioning me out of that because I'm actually moving out. So I'm only like 25% in that business now. And most of my time is actually on the farm because that's where I really want to be. Again, the online education business was started because we saw the need and I needed a job. I'd literally just gotten fired. So that's a whole nother story, working for a billionaire.
Podcast part 2. I see in the future.
To be continued.
Yeah, the hedge fund manager who thought he was going to make more money off of arugula than he was his hedge fund. So yes, that's a whole nother episode in of its own. But you can, again, farming can make really good money. I don't want to disparage that aspect. Is it a lot of work? Heck yes. Do you have to have the right markets? Do you have to be dialed in very, very well? Heck yes. But it's not about the money to me. It's really about, knowing what I really want to do and loving it. And at the end of the day, I'd much rather be out in the field with the kids, planting in the greenhouse or walking the fields or stuff in the field than at the office, 6 to 8 hours a day. So,
so that was kind of our question is where was your passion? I think it's really interesting, though, to hear you say that, the farmers that are succeeding at farming don't want to talk about it. We were just having a conversation with somebody that does a lot of data management and policy work for farmers markets, small farmers, but specifically small farmers that are in farmers markets. And we were saying part of the challenge is that collecting enough data to make us look as strong as the grocery industry when you go to Congress to ask for policy making changes and that kind of thing would be great, except it's so hard to drag that data out because a lot of farmers and small makers for that matter sort of don't want to admit how much they're making. They don't want to lose that oh shucks handmade image.
Yeah.
They want to keep it sort of on the down low. They don't want to attract more competitors. And so it's really tough to accumulate accurate data that shows just how big an industry this is and how much small farmers and small makers are a part of the economy, how many people and how many families this whole do it yourself, grow it yourself, make it yourself kind of industry is supporting.
Yeah, and there is kind of this interesting thing at the farmers market too, I think, for shoppers of like not wanting to always just go to the big. I'm thinking about a few of our vendors at our big Saturday market, they look very professional and very like
streamlined. They have like
and it's
people
like
in their booth.
Before I worked at farmers markets and I would shop at farmers markets, I'd be like, I'm going to go to this underdog over here. But then there's some farmers that are so underdog that you don't want to shop at theirs. So I think there is kind of this weird balance of farmers market shoppers. They want to support local, but they don't want to like buy from the sellouts or people that seem like they're so I could understand some farmers who do very well being a little hush-hush about it, or they don't, and they don't want to be flashy because that doesn't really jive with their like local...
Yeah, the shopper's perception of what is like a local... Like,
So, to that point, the other thing, aspect of it too, is farmers, again, because they're typically not making a lot of money, they feel like they're the underdogs, so they feel like they don't need to report their income. So a lot of them don't report their cash sales. Which again only hurts them because, the coronavirus payments, it all came back to what your taxes showed. And some of these farmers that, again, did the right thing, they got massive checks. And other farmers who tried to hide all their income, they got little tiny checks.
And for Social Security too, if you're not claiming any income, then, when it's time to retire, you're not going to be able to
If you want to sell your business ever, it's not going to, what are you going to sell a business that doesn't look profitable even though it was?
Exactly.
That's not a good business plan. Yeah.
We used to talk to restaurant consultants about this same thing, and then when we got into farmers markets, we found it was like restaurants, but more so. And it was reminding people, if you're not claiming all your income, how are you going to get a car loan? How are you going to buy a house? If you ever want to sell your business, how are you going to prove what it made?
Yeah.
So being on the up and up is a good thing to do. It's just the right moral thing to do, pay your taxes, but it's also the smart thing to do. It's going to benefit you in a lot of ways.
Well, and I would say to farmers listening to this is if you set your business up correctly with an LLC or even a sole proprietorship, you can have business expenses. And the government, again, right now, up until right now, has been, I don't know what the next couple year, because I know there's a lot of tax things in the air right now, but has been incredibly generous. Section 179, I talked to so many business owners, they don't even know what Section 179 is. And basically what it is let's say you have a $30,000 profit at the end of the year that you kind of would like to, again, not show up on your taxes. All you have to do is buy a piece of equipment for $30,000 or more, put it on payments, and the government will let you write off all that money, even the payments that you haven't made.
Yeah, it's
so
like
obviously,
accelerated depreciation to the nth.
Exactly. Yeah. It's crazy. That's the kind of stuff that the government's willing to do for you because they want small businesses to succeed and invest in equipment and infrastructure because they know it's going to be more. Anyway, so again, I get really frustrated with some of these farmers sometimes. Like, come on, just be professional, act like a business.
That's our whole thing here. We're constantly like, everybody in this industry act like a business. Like, let's all get together and do it,
Yeah. Just think of if every single farmer at the market was collecting emails and being professional. Think of what they could do, the impact they could have in their communities.
We put Costco down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We got you, Kirkland.
Yes. I used to like Costco until they stopped doing samples.
Uh-oh. That's a touchy subject this year, the whole sampling thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, kind of to wrap us up, you're always working on something new. You say that your passion is being out in the fields and farming, but when we're talking to you about this stuff, you sound pretty passionate. So I'm not sure you're really entirely
You have a shared passion.
married to the farmer's market. I think you're still excited about the education. So what's next for Thriving Farmer and Michael Kilpatrick, and where are you headed?
Yeah, so I think I'm glad you said that, because, in one aspect, as an education company, I should be making content every single day. I mean, like, we keep talking as a team that I really should have a full-time videographer just follow us around, because then we could because I like literally know I need to create content for the business, and I'm trying to fit it in the weekends, and like, it needs to be front and center. So like, I think what it really comes down to is like where your passion is, like what you end up doing. And what I end up doing is outside. Again, if I could have my dream job, it would be being able to work in my shop, create cool new stuff on the farm, just work out in the fields with the stuff, and answer emails like a half hour a day. That would be like my dream. So that's where we're trying to build this. Is obviously right now is massive, incredible season of me actually having to do a lot of the work on the farm. And so again, that's something we work with farmers on, is like picking radishes. 90% of the farm, a farmer should not be picking radishes if they're at any scale. They should have a team that's going to work with them and doing that. And the farmer should be the business side, managing, figuring out infrastructure / R&D / visioneering, creating those new connections for people and stuff like that. So that's kind of like right now we're like in, again, that beginning stage. So I'm doing a lot of the hands-on actual aspects of picking the radishes, harvesting the spinach, that kind of stuff. But the goal is that I'll kind of scale a little bit out of that. And so still I'll keep my hands in the dirt with a lot of things, but be more of, being still working on the farm, but more in the aspect of, systems and processes and inventing new stuff. It's really cool that right across the US and around the world, if basically I'm best known for taking wash machines and turning them into salad spinners. That's pretty much what everyone in the world.
My mom did that when I was a kid.
Took a washing machine and turned it into a salad spinner?
She'd make salad there's 5 kids in our family. So she'd just take heads of lettuce and put them in the washing machine.
Wow.
And in my head, this whole conversation, I can't get out of the idea of opening a big refrigerator door to find a bunch of chickens and ducklings.
I need one of those.
Right?
She's so nice.
So yeah, I think the inventing part of what you do is definitely probably the most fun.
It is fun. And so obviously, you try to create that, and hopefully the goal will be in a couple of years we'll be able to get there. But right now it's, planting seeds and harvesting stuff and talking to customers and all of that. So that's the love, that's the passion. Obviously we have a summit every year because it kind of got so big that we kind of have to do them now. So we've got a really fun one coming up this year. We haven't announced the topic yet, so I can't do that right yet, but it's going to be fabulous.
Spill.
It does involve farmers markets in some aspect, or at least you would sell this product at a farmer's market. So we can obviously, you could get you on to talk about farmers market tips and stuff. That we'd love to have you for that. But yeah, it's, that's kind of where we are. And, again, the cool thing is just, I love looking at the whole industry. And I think that's where we differ from a lot of the other folks that are in the space doing what we do is, I love the aspect of working with farmers around the world doing 9,000 different things. I'm not I'm not tied to any one system, process, or way. I mean, we did farmers markets for a decade. We're now messing around with online stores. We're figuring out this mobile thing. We'll be back at farmers markets, possibly, probably, because farmers markets are the number one way to reach the right clientele in your city and town and area, because that's where they go. They know people that want farm fresh food are going to a farmers market. So when we get to that point where we're really looking to scale, we'll probably be back at the farmers markets. It's going to change a little bit. I think that's kind of where we are, is we're trying to figure out how can we help farmers, no matter what they're selling, no matter what they're doing, how can we give them faster, better, quicker to where they're trying to go? And that's where we're building the audience for that.
And you really do a good job of it. You are so helpful to people. I know that our audience at Intense loves you, but I'm also on your private Facebook group of Thriving Farmers, and the amount of information that gets exchanged there, and tips and encouragement for one farmer
Yeah.
to another and you to your audience has really been impressive. It's something that's just been a joy to watch you really give people great tools, great encouragement, and I think you're helping to feed the world.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I mean, that's the goal, is move that from that 5% of farms to like 10, 15% that succeed after 5 years. That
Right.
would be, that's when I know I'm successful.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
helps everybody.
You're doing
not
great
just
work.
them, so.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks,
thank
Michael.
you.
Really enjoyed the conversation. I know all of our listeners, especially the ones that came to the conference, will appreciate this conversation. So we'll list all the information where you can find Michael's
So many places
courses
to find Michael.
and, yeah, all the places you can find him.
Yes.
So, because I know
Yeah,
you're
just-
so helpful.
Yeah, growingfarmers.com is kind of like the hub. So if they go there, they'll be able to find pretty much everything. And I actually, if you really want like what's happening right now, just follow me on Facebook. Because I love to post. I love to stir the pot a few times there. So it can get quite entertaining.
Good.
Love it. We love that kind of stuff.
Talk to you soon.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
All right,
so
thanks for
much.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to American Farmland Trust for protecting small farmers and supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com and join today.
Farmers markets are all about community, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. Connect with people just like you from various parts of the country and share what's happening in your area in the terrific conversations over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. If you're just getting started in farmers markets, check out our Vendor 101 online course at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcast, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. If you are listening on YouTube, give us that thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will have another great episode next week, so tune in.